Well, honeybees particularly, but pollinators in general, have been linked to the success of mankind for many years. People have been beekeeping for thousands of years, and whether or not they knew it, keeping bees in areas where crops grow benefited the crops.
Beekeepers were raising alarms, both from the tiny scale beekeepers, hobbyists with 2 or 3 colonies, to these large, especially the large commercial beekeepers, were noticing something very strange. And not all of them were, but when it happened, it was the speed at which colonies collapsed, maybe a month, maybe even less time. The worker bees in the colony would sort of swoosh out of the colony somehow. And we think they weren't just flying till they couldn't fly anymore. They were probably dying early as they went out, and that was distinct. We haven't seen that before. If there's a toxic challenge that's really strong, the bees are actually littered in front of the colony, and that wasn't happening this time. It seemed as though the bees were just fading quickly out on regular foraging trips maybe, but they just weren't making it back home to the nest. One beekeeper in the Northeast had lost 900 out of about 1,000 beehives in a short order. And so at that juncture, that sort of 2006 to 2007, it was clear that it wasn't just a freak accident in one area. It was something that was happening regionally, and eventually it seemed to be happening on both coasts of the U.S. People have complained about this in other parts of the world.
Well, I think there's 3 things that are killing our bees. There's not enough flowers for our bees in both agricultural and urban environments, and these are flowers that secrete both pollen and nectar for bees. So there's just not enough flowers for bees, which means they suffer from poor nutrition. And then the flowers they do encounter often are contaminated with pesticides, and these are insecticides and fungicides and herbicides, and all of those can be toxic or have sublethal effects on bees. So between the improper nutrition, lack of nutrition, and pesticides, then bees have their own diseases and parasites. And these things in combination are more than our bees can handle, and they die.
The puzzle really has been that if you go to California, you see a different group of viruses popping up from Pennsylvania, from Florida, from here in North Carolina. And you know, if it were just the flu virus of the month or of the year, we would see the same thing all over the country and possibly all over the world, and we're not seeing that at all, which suggests it's something in the bees themselves that they're less able to defend themselves against those viruses. Our long-term goal is to give tools that beekeepers, even small-scale beekeepers, could use to breed bees that were healthier. So a screen for hygienic behavior or for immunity in those bees. And that would, they wouldn't have to be a genetic test or anything, but just sort of insights into how they might breed bees of that sort in their populations. And one of the neat things about the recent work in this area especially is there are a lot of regional beekeepers who are interested in helping the bees help themselves again, to get these traits into their genetics and into their behaviors and immunity. And that really is something that in the long term we know will pay off in healthier bees, and also a kind of an industry, a local industry of bees with desirable traits.
So applied research in academia can be very difficult because the idea behind applied research is that we're trying to find an answer for some clientele group. If in my case it's beekeepers, they have an issue in their colonies, and we set out to try to answer some important problem. But not only are beekeepers involved, but industry's involved, other academicians and researchers are involved, you've got special interest groups involved. So when we have this particular issue where pollinators are in decline, we have to recognize that pollinators don't live in a black box. There are many inputs into the system. There's a whole ecology associated with the life of honeybees and other bees and butterflies and bats and birds. So oftentimes these problems that we're trying to address are not single-faceted. They're multifaceted. They come from all directions, including all types of science and all types of disciplines, to address holistically the issues that we face. It's crucial that we address honeybee and other pollinator health because of their importance to mankind, habitat health, and ecosystems in general, but it's going to take a lot of effort from a lot of researchers to do that.
So bees collect substances from the environment that really have a lot of health benefits for them. Propolis is one thing that I've been studying, and these are resins that bees collect from trees, and they have a lot of antimicrobial properties, so they help the bees' immune systems. And we also know that they're very good for human health. They're used as antibacterial compounds and antiviral compounds and antifungal compounds in human medicine.
Honey itself carries pollen from things that we're allergic to. If we ingest the honey within 50 to 100 miles of the radius of where we live, we help our immune system develop an immunity against our allergies, naturally.
So what's so nice working with this crowd here and the beekeepers in this area and others in many pockets of the U.S. right now is that they're passionate about the bees themselves. They want to look at traits of the bees they could bring into their beekeeping at a smaller scale to breed for bees that are resistant to disease or tolerant and have nice behaviors, and also to manage them in a way that many of the larger beekeepers simply can't or don't choose, in a sense, to manage them in that intensive way that we see here.
I oftentimes get questioned how the general public can get involved in this and what they can do to help pollinators. Many people don't realize that they can keep bees themselves in their own backyard.
I think if people would plant more flowers, and these would be flowers that bees like, that have nectar and pollen for them, that would bloom over the whole growing season, that would be wonderful. And the second thing would be to reduce the amount of pesticides we use, so that when bees are foraging on the flowers you plant for them, that they won't suffer any ill effects.
Oftentimes, vegetable gardens aren't sufficient in and of themselves to supply all that pollinators need. So sometimes you need to supplement vegetable gardens with native wildflowers, native shrubs, native trees, etc. The last way that I tell people that they can support pollinators in general is just by supporting research. There are many opportunities out there for people to support research, either by providing land or providing the opportunity for researchers to do research on their property or supporting financially. The reason I discuss all of this specifically is because it's very important to me, as someone who appreciates the complexity of life and how things are interwoven, to communicate to the general public the necessity for pollinators, how important they are for us, how important they are for whole ecosystems and other animals out there. And it's my job as a researcher and my colleagues' job as a researcher to determine how we can improve the health of pollinators and provide for them, since they provide so much for us so regularly.